It's raining tacos from out of the sky. Tacos, no need to ask why. Just open your mouth and close your eyes. It's raining tacos. It's raining tacos. Out in the street. Tacos. All you can eat.
Hi everybody, this is David and welcome to the Week 7 Fireside Chat for Educational Leadership 655, Pupil Services and Non-Discrimination, Viterbo University. This is the final Fireside Chat for the course. I do have a little bit of a cold again, so my voice might come in and out a little bit, but I'm going to try to get through this final Fireside Chat. When you are completing your FEMA certificate, I want you also to think about the 4K sites of students that you might have with disabilities that are working in the community. What happens if something impacts those locations? For example, if a 4K is in an evacuation site, what does that look like? Have you considered also the needs of students in that setting? For example, if a student had an inhaler or some kind of special medication. So that often kind of gets left out of the chain of information, or if a school goes into lockdown, the other schools are notified, but then the question is, did we notify our 4Ks? Did we notify our offsites? Just that you're thinking about those, because we do have students with special needs who are going to be all throughout our community. Your learning team assignments were terrific. Great job, everybody. I appreciated going through those. I want to add some points, take some pieces from the different assignments, and then also a little bit of my own perspective. But first of all, you're very comprehensive in going through the legal aspects of 504, ADA, IDEA, how those might play into serving Bruce, and then also having a plan ready for him when he arrived. And yes, I was very glad to see that you had considered induction for what if Bruce's teacher is out for a day, or what if the lunchroom supervisor is out for a day? Who is going to then ensure Bruce's safety in those settings? So very nice job, everybody. So some of the points. One, involve your school librarian, because that person is going to have some awesome resources for allergy awareness, child-themed books. Examples, The Princess and the Peanut Allergy and Aaron's Awful Allergies. Those are awesome. Kids enjoy reading those. You can work those into classroom literacy, and there are so many more out there. So when you're looking at educating students about allergies, definitely involve your school librarian. Also, there's a book, My Friend Will by Tara Tuchel, came out in Wisconsin maybe 10, 12 years ago. So you can check that out. My Friend Will. It was co-written by Tara Tuchel, who was a teacher, and then also by an elementary student. And it talked about this elementary student, her friend. His name was Will, and he had autism, so it was My Friend Will. And again, in that whole theme of acceptance and awareness and education about here's what it is for my friend to have autism, and he is my friend, and here's what I like about Will. And again, once students become aware of what an allergy is, allergy reaction, what autism is, once those things have been demystified, that barrier is gone, and those friendships can start to definitely build. And it also is the same for staff when you have that in-service. And I remember this very specifically. I was serving a district about 10 years ago, and a high-need student moved in from a very large metropolitan district. And one of the key staff members who'd be serving this student, who'd been in the district for over 20 years, was very quiet at the meeting we had to talk about receiving this student. And as we had the IEP meeting, this person was also quiet. And it surprised me, because they had been such a leader in the district and so innovative and creative and energetic with students. And a couple days had passed, and this person approached me and said, "Can we talk about this student?" And I said, sure, absolutely. And she said, I feel horrible. Like ever since I found out the student was coming here, because the student presents with needs that I haven't served ever in my career. Like these are very complex. And I'm just not sure I'm going to be able to do this. I'm uncertain. I want to work with the student, but I'm not sure if I have the skill set right now. And I paused and I said, I don't think any of us have the skill set right now. I mean, you're right. This student is presenting much different than any student that we served in the past. But we can do this. We're working as a team and we'll adjust and we'll learn from the sending district and also trust that you bring a large knowledge base to serving the student. And you're going to find quickly how you will be able to interface with the student and where the baselines will be. And it was amazing because I said, just give it a little bit of time, like a week or two of getting to know that student. And she came back and she said, yeah, I definitely feel confident. Here are some things that I've done with other students that I think I can apply here. I've done some research here as a team. We want to go to this professional development because we don't know much about, this specific condition which the student was presenting with. And it all started to come together. So that's one of those things where education can go miles. And looking at your school librarian. And if you don't have these books, have the school librarian purchase them. Or you can even purchase these. Often if you approach like the Lions Club or something like that and say, we want some book donations for, allergy awareness or special needs awareness, they'll be more than glad to help out with that. So PBIS can be a terrific way to reinforce non-discrimination practices and feature your school students and also staff. So I'm talking about like PBIS videos. A lot of schools do those. You can go onto YouTube and search PBS lunchroom video elementary, and you'll come up with a ton of them. Middle school, high school, whatever. But those are fun to record. You can record them with an iPad. The students can record them. You can make them a minute long. They can show on the smart boards at the start of the school day, or you could have a smart board set up and it could show in the lunchroom or something like that. You could have a couple of them play through. You could actually have some students pick up some different topics that they want it to do, like how to play safely on the playground now that we have snow out there, and how to line up for the bus and how to walk through the hallways and what our expectations are. And it's so powerful to see all of your students doing that and staff, because they make a connection when they watch that. It's not foreign. It's not anything that you've purchased and they're like, I don't know this school. I don't know those kids. This doesn't really mean anything to me, versus that's Jimmy, that's Sarah, that's Pedro, that's Armando. Oh my goodness. Like that's Andy. This is so cool. That's Mr. Mac. I mean, so you go through and you can, just imagine maybe Bruce would be a little bit young right now, but maybe Bruce has a third or fourth grader, and there's a PBIS video about washing your hands and the importance of that as a way to make the school safer for students with allergies. And Bruce is a part of that. Again, you'd want to make sure you had parents informed if the students are going to be involved in some of these videos. But oh my goodness, like so powerful. So think about that. With administration of an EpiPen or calling 911, you need to convey to your staff that you will have their back as an administrator. If a parent comes in and they're upset saying, why did you call 911? Why did you administer the EpiPen? It didn't need to happen. No, that's the discretion of your staff. You've given the training for the safety regarding allergy reaction. If your staff are making a decision that this is escalating to the point of where they need to administer an EpiPen to possibly save the student's life, then you need to jump in at that point and be the buffer between if there's friction with that parent and that staff member. Because if you don't do that, you don't convey that right away, teachers and staff will hesitate. They will hesitate to make that call to 911. First they'll hesitate to administer the EpiPen, and you don't want that. But again, it's going to be a natural reaction to people the people are going to have. It's like, do I really want to do this? Because I know if I administer the EpiPen, the parents are going to be here. 911 is going to be here. Ambulance and all of this is what if administration gets upset with me and says, it wasn't to the level of severity where we need it to do this. Again, you all have systems in place where there might be a nurse involved or someone who's going to have more medical training, but maybe not. Maybe the nurse isn't going to be there at that moment, or else it is a rural facility and a nurse is there a day or two a week. So that's something as a pupil services director right up front, you talk about with staff of saying, if you feel after the training that you need to administer the EpiPen, I'm there. Like, I will support you in full of that decision to administer the EpiPen and to call 911. Because I have had instances where fellow administrators have shared stories about parents who've come in and they've been upset, saying, 911 was called. Now there's an ambulance here and they want to transport my child. And frankly, it comes down to, I don't want to pay the bill. And I get that. Okay. I can understand that. But again, we have to make the decision in the best interest of the child. And that is to administer that EpiPen and to dial 911 and make sure your sequence is EpiPen 911. And then if a parent is called after that. It's not parent called first, or 911 then parent, or EpiPen then parent then 911. No, it doesn't work that way. And parents will say, I want to be there because you can administer the EpiPen, I'll be there, and then I'll make a determination if I can take my child in and out into the hospital or if they're okay. No, that has to be done by a medical professional. So just saying, those are pressures that you will probably receive or encounter at some point, and you're in very sound footing to have your protocol for, again, administering the EpiPen, dialing 911, then contacting the parent. Then if the parent is there and EMS is there, the parent and EMS can make a decision on whether or not to transport. Then that's kind of out of your hands. So a difference between your plans was how much you involved Bruce in the development of the plan and also self-advocacy. So some of you didn't involve Bruce as much, and others involved him quite a bit, and to the point where he could self-advocate and say, I can't have that on my lunch tray. So again, this will be a case-by-case determination. He's still young, but I've also seen kindergartners who have been very strong advocates for food allergy, of what they can have and what they can't have. Consider using a 2 or 3 minute YouTube video with staff to help give them a context for the progression of an allergic reaction. That helps a lot versus just talking about it. There might be some redness, there might be some swelling, there could be hives. People are like, okay, kind of get what that is. But like, if you can find and vet a video that's 2 or 3 minutes long, it just provides that much of a greater context for people. YouTube has so many terrific resources, again, that you're screening ahead of time, available for things like that. Also, make clear to everybody that a history of mild reactions does not predict the severity of future reactions. Just because you've had 10 reactions to peanuts and all of those reactions have been mild, reaction number 11 could be severe, could be deadly. I worked with an administrator who worked at Red Lobster all through college and was preparing seafood all day and loved seafood. And one day had an out of the blue severe reaction to seafood, had to quit his job and couldn't continue to access seafood. Also, remind staff that they've been through this before. They have served students with complex and comorbid needs. So even though this is case by case, they are competent. They've been trained in the past. They will be able to meet the needs of this student. Your local medical providers, such as like your school health insurance carrier, whoever is your provider for your staff insurance, even Walgreens, local organizations, they'll usually contribute EpiPens to schools if you ask them. That's always been my experience. They'll contribute EpiPens, and the price of EpiPens has dropped. But let's say you get 10 EpiPens, donate it to your school a year. You can keep those in a lunchroom, in a gymnasium area. Now, the thing with an EpiPen is they expire like after a year. So you have to keep cycling them out. Now, the good thing is you can take an expired EpiPen, use it for training. I've seen nurses do this. They get a grapefruit and then they stab it with the EpiPen, or have staff do that actually to get a sense for what it takes to get that injector to activate. But then people are actually manipulating. They're seeing the EpiPen, and don't eat the grapefruit, whatever you do, or orange, or whatever it is. The Alexandria, Virginia documents, I provided again. They give you some insight into different ways to do your final project and also your 5-year Pupil Services non-discrimination report. We have the video about Savannah from Toma High School. So this brings up the question of, is this video sharing too much of Savannah's personal information, or is this video about self-advocacy? And I tend to view it as self-advocacy. I really like that video. I think it's done very well. I think it educates the student body and anybody watching that, and it puts Savannah almost in an ambassador type of role. Not everyone might see it that way, but again, think of this. What if instead of Savannah, that's a 7th grade Bruce or something like that? So you need parents to be on board, but this is something that can benefit you greatly, and especially as you start to contextualize portions like of your handbook of what, your anti-bully efforts, harassment reporting. You can work those into demonstrations like PBIS videos or students giving presentations. A blind man's amazing stories about personal safety. My interview with David Hyde, who is a man who is blind. David speaks a lot in that video. It's a very fun video to watch because he has amazing stories of growing up, and his mom wanted him to experience what other kids were experiencing. So made a baseball, tied stuffed other socks inside of a sock and tied it. And that was the baseball. And then they had a bat. And David talks about as he was getting his first jobs, what employment was like. And now he works with families helping students get employment. So he's done a variety of experiences in the community setting for youth who are visually impaired. But that is a very intriguing video. I would encourage you to watch it. Use the research module. So we have time coming up after this week. You get a break. You're not doing your weekly questions anymore. Use that research module to meet with different people in your district. Review your handbooks. Talk with students. Review your district's 5-year pupil services plan. It's somewhere. Peruse some IEPs. Listen to what counselors tell you about the needs of students. Sit down with them and say, hey, what are students coming to you with as far as like needs? What are you hearing on a daily or weekly basis? And what are the challenges of that? And what are the successes? And what are the agencies that are helping you? Review the professional development materials. What are we using in the district to help people understand bullying and harassment and suicide prevention? Think back, to collaborating with neighboring districts. We talked about that. Are there some opportunities to do that? This is also the time you want to start thinking about key points if you are going to interview for a pupil services director position, or if you're currently in that position. What are things you'd want to share with the board of like, here's the state of our pupil services program, and here's the direction that I would like to take pupil services. For example, I want to review the handbooks in the district and check for readability and readability tools, and then also meet with students at that level and have them read these portions of the handbook and then ask for them to describe, what does this mean to you? Like in that they could demonstrate how they would report concerns. I want to know that we do not have a passive barrier of access with these documents. I'll tell you, that will be very impressive to a school board or to an interview committee. Shout outs. Carrie, you noted that I had revisited the themes of professional development and litigation throughout the Fireside chats. You're accurate. I don't intend to make people apprehensive in this class about, I guess, talking too much from the expert witness role. I want to make you informed. I want to make sure that this training program for Viterbo, we meet in the summer and we talk as an entire group of faculty what we believe students entering into schools as pupil services leaders, what they need to know. And I think that's super important because if we just look at the professional standards that are out there, they're very vague. The national professional standards, I wrote about this in my book, School of Errors, extremely, extremely broad and vague. And this is an advantage of Viterbo. We sit down and we talk about what do people really, really need to know? What are they going to experience on the job that we can help them with either that knowledge base or help so they know how to get connected with people or resources that can inform them. So that's what I'm trying to do. So yeah, you're probably not going to get the expert witness side. You're not going to get as much talk about litigation in some other classes, but it is very appropriate for right here. And we did have that discussion as we reviewed this class this past summer. And as for litigation, sure, anybody in any profession can be sued. The thing with school folks is whether it be administrators or whether it be teachers, it really is a surprise. They just don't expect it, especially teachers. So I actually observed this 1 week ago with a pupil services director in Wisconsin, contacted me, a friend, and said, I just received a subpoena. I'm involved in some litigation that's happening, between the parents and the district. I've been named in this and was really taken back by it. So, typically don't do anything in Wisconsin for litigation, but this was a friend and not wanting to know, specifics, but just in sharing some of the information, this person was identified more tangentially, but I said, here are the things that you're probably going to be asked. And there was a court appearance that person did have to make. And I said, here's what a deposition typically is. And I said, just, of course, it's being honest and things like that. But here, again, are documents you're probably going to be asked for. And that's why I talk about it a lot, is making sure that your professional development is well documented and that you can match it to data-driven needs and you can identify who was at your professional development. If you can get through those things, you can present those things, either in this case, it's litigation, or whether it be to your board or just for best practice. You're in great shape. You've met your standard of care. So the key themes I've hoped to establish in this course. So the first one, you act in the best interest of the student. That is your guiding measure. You're acting in the best interest of the student. That goes way back to fundamental law for schools hundreds of years ago. 60 case studies analyzing best interest of the student found on a case-by-case basis. The definition always defaulted to what the situation and context was. And I don't want to give the exact site because I know the site, Stefkowich and Bagley. I don't know the year. But again, when people are acting in the best interests of the student, that is significant, puts you in a very good position. The other part is understanding discretion. If you have a district which has a lot of site-based discretion, meaning your principals basically run their building, that can lead to disconnects from district office initiatives. So the building could say, here's an initiative from district office. Here's how we will implement it here, which might mean we're going to use the materials differently. So the fidelity is not going to be there. We're not going to do the same level of documentation for a bullying and harassment investigation. We're not going to follow the handbook quite as tight. So those things happen. So you need to know what discretion is. And also you need to make sure that you understand district level discretion, because if district level discretion is so rote, for example, if this happens, this is a tier 2. We have 7 tiers. This is a tier 2, and this is the exact consequence that goes with a tier 2. That doesn't take into consideration case by case assessment of what happened in the situation and context. So things like that go over the edge. Or they used to have those zero tolerance policies. A kid formed his tater tots in the shape of a gun, and it was a kindergarten, and like, I don't know, it looks like an owl to me, but and they're bumped out of some school then for 2 weeks. So it's where you have case by case discretion. Matching professional development to data indicated needs, very important, making sure that if we have students with disabilities and they're not performing well in math at the 4th grade level, we need to do professional development for math at the 4th grade level. So let's make sure that we're matching our professional development to data indicated needs. People tend to go to things that they like to go to. Like every year I go to this conference because I network and all of that. Well, there's value in that. But again, I need to make sure as a pupil services director that we are matching. And ultimately, if I'm not doing that, I'm not really meeting the needs of all of my of students and students with special needs. For example, we have students with special needs who are struggling in math, and we're not giving appropriate math professional development. That's a disconnect. We've got to fix that. Documentation and record keeping. Yes, I talk about professional development, having people sign in, recording the presentations, keeping the materials. That's also good for mid-year induction of staff. It's good for, the following year. You can go back and remember what you gave and build off of that, tweak it, adjust it. But if anybody asks you, what did you do at the start of the year for bullying and harassment? Educating staff of what this is. And I did have that PowerPoint that I shared, and then how to report it. It, again, is part of Act 309 in Wisconsin. You can say, here is the PowerPoint or the presentation that I gave. It was available online then to all staff. Staff had an opportunity for questions. We recorded it. And we also had a sign in, and staff that weren't there were notified. And then this was the means by which they accessed it. And if they had any questions, here's who they were to direct the questions to. That's solid. That's rock solid if you do that. So just because it hasn't been done in your district, or it feels unfamiliar or uncomfortable to have people start signing in, it doesn't mean that it's wrong. This is the practice. I work a lot also with people in the medical profession, and this is definitely the practice in the medical profession. Was consulting with one of my friends who does in Pittsburgh at a large hospital professional development, and everything is documented. Every person that goes there, they have their name is written down. All of the materials are saved, opportunities to ask questions, and everything is all laid out. So check the accessibility of your handbooks. Here's point number 5, accessibility of handbooks and materials intended for parents and students, also meaning newsletters, things like that they are at that register or vernacular level where the parents and students can make sense of them. They can comprehend them. Because if you don't do that, if you come out and these things, these documents, handbooks come out at a 12th grade plus reading level, that's a passive form of discrimination. And that is something I would definitely point out in an expert witness role. I have, and it has resonated when I have done that. That is a very powerful statement as an expert witness to make, saying, here are the materials that were developed by the district, and the district really didn't seem to make an attempt to identify if these were understood by parents or by students. So even if if it's so much different if a district says, we did this, and here we met with students on whatever date, and this can be like in a monitoring report to the board about handbooks. There's a little note about it. We had, we got some feedback from students on checking for understanding, some sampling, and everything was conveyed to a point where we believe that students could understand and demonstrate how to report threats and whatever. into our threat reporting system, that's solid. Again, solid. That's a great core to work off of and say, it's unfortunate that this student might have struggled with this, but overall, we believe that our student body is accessing and had access, to this document. So my last point, number 6, qualitative sampling is underutilized and it's very valuable. Qualitative sampling is simply interviewing students, getting focus groups of 4 to 6 students together to talk about like school culture. What is school connectedness here? Check out the CDC and school connectedness, right? What is school connectedness? What is bullying? If somebody starts off new tomorrow, what are the things that they're going to like about our school and what are things that they're not going to like about our school? What if you were a mentor? What were some things that you'd show them? What would you tell them about our school? Things like this, very important. So as a director, you always want to be able to answer questions such as, when was your staff trained on suicide prevention and what materials were used for training? When was your staff trained on allergies and how to respond to a student having a severe reaction to an allergy? When were staff trained on locations of AEDs in the buildings and how to use them if you have AEDs? These practices are in place. They're in a number of Wisconsin districts. I was also working with a superintendent in a district that had very extensive MRSA, the bacteria, which can kind of the flesh-eating bacteria, has shown up in a few gymnasiums, locker rooms, things like that. And they had a very aggressive protocol for how they would treat things, weight room equipment, how they were educating all staff, all athletes, and all of that. And that was not even required by law. Although there was an executive order under the Obama administration, you can go back and find for MRSA, there was supposed to be this whole protocol put in place across the country. Never happened when the new administration came in. But this was something just that the district had made a priority because they had some students that were identified with MRSA, and they did have some MRSA identified areas in their schools. You can have these types of things too with mold and allergy, or mold identification in schools. I think that happened to a couple districts at the start of this school year in Wisconsin. So thank you, Carrie. And Denise, another shout out. You wrote about hyper simulations as training tools, and you wrote about the potential active shooter who was brought into a building. This real life event, made staff feel more, the intent was to make people feel more prepared. Actually, you report it made you feel sick to your stomach. After that, you lost respect for administration. So I'm just saying, I'm not a fan of these at all. From a research standpoint and from a parent standpoint, I do not advocate these types of drills. Now, you'll have a number of your districts do these type of drills. If you do, then your position is different than mine. In my book, School of Errors, releasing now August 10th, because I needed to tie it into a Barnes & Noble release. schoolofairs.com, if you want to note that site, because that will eventually become live and link over to the publishing house for the book. But anyway, if this was such a good idea to do this, okay, my question would be, why don't we do it for fire, the same type of simulation of smoke in hallways and stuff like that? For tornado drills, why wouldn't we fire up barn fans and throw handfuls of rubber pellets so they go down the hallway? Why do we only do it for these drills? And the other part is, if you tried to run this through an institutional review board, IRB at a college to study these drills, nobody would approve it ever. This would not pass an IRB at a university level. So you're not going to go out there and find a lot of research unless it's research done by these companies that are doing it, and they're interviewing like staff who've participated, like right after the event. What'd you think about it? While adrenaline is still there. But to actually look at a scientific model, to set up a scientific research model of variables that you're measuring, what your baseline is, what your null hypothesis is, all of that doesn't exist, because nobody would touch the liability on that. So you talked about how your school is planning on doing the mock crash for prompt scenario. Yeah, I've sat in on many of those. And the thing is, you obviously know that those are fabricated because there are, cars that are tipped over in your parking lot, and there are, bleachers or kids stand around. So it isn't the same element of kind of the hyper realistic active shooter intruder drill. But the studies on those types of drills indicate, and even when parents come in and say, I lost my son or daughter 10 years ago on prom night because they were drinking or they were texting or something like that, they were on the phone. Those have about a 2-week impact on adults and on students. And then people kind of go back to their baseline. And that is just the way that it is. After the 9/11 attacks, and I write about this again in School of Airs, a number of processes around the country, including like professional sports, went back to regular schedules, and people were going to games. People were going to the comedy clubs in New York. And it wasn't because people were callous or unfeeling, but it is the part that there is what's called a torus. Again, I write about this in detail. We all have a torus. We get up during a day and we expect certain things to happen during that day. I'm going to eat breakfast. I'm going to drive to work, whatever. And then when your torus is disrupted, like January 18th, on my way home from work, I was in the middle of a multi-car accident. My car was totaled out. My torus changed. I didn't have a car anymore. I was, hurt. So I needed to reestablish my torus. I needed to get different transportation. I needed to get my body well again. So I needed to get kind of out of what is called chaos, technically chaos outside of the torus, move from chaos back into a torus, Torus. So might be a little bit much there, but so is there value? Yeah, I think if it's very proximal to prom, there is value in this for kids. But is it something that's going to last much longer than 2 weeks? Probably not, statistically speaking. All right, as we roll into the home stretch, Sarah, you mentioned that your district had multiple ways for students to report threats. I think that is terrific. Too many districts still have tell an adult as your threat reporting system, or, they just have up on the wall by the water fountain, if you see a bomb, if you see a knife, if you see a gun, text this number. And those are just ignored, right? Come on, nobody really looks at that. But you have multiple systems, layers of systems to receive the inputs. That's the thing about school safety. So after Sandy Hook, we had 450 bills that came out nationwide for school safety. And most of those were all about fortification. Almost all of them, fortification, even building schools without windows, which directly contradicted a study by the Hashong Mahone group in 1999 of thousands of classrooms and the impact of sunlight on academic performance and on social performance of students. But anyway, things like this happen. And that's why we have all of these crazy things around schools, like the bollards. Even though we don't have people driving through into schools, through the front doors or running up and down sidewalks. Actually, there are more deaths caused by bollards. Talk about this too in my book, research out of Ohio, their transportation department, the number of deaths by not only people on bikes, on like bike trails running into bollards, but people just in general running. Someone is running in front of them and then they move to the side because there's a bollard there, and someone runs into a bollard and is killed or maimed. And again, the ice in Wisconsin and the northern states that accumulates around these bollards. So kind of like you're thinking you're creating a safer environment, which I would argue you're not, because the research hasn't proven that we need bollards. The research has proven we need better two-way radios. The research has proven we need better inputs for students, that all students can access reporting systems, that most students with disabilities don't understand the reporting systems, don't understand bullying, harassment, threat of harm to self or others to the extent of their non-disabled peers. That's been well proven. Actually been asked to do a white paper for a significant conference out east on that. But anyway, we also have this thing in Wisconsin. We have 420 plus school districts, and we have all of those districts doing their own thing for reporting. And that, that's not efficient. You go to safeoregon.com. So the state of Oregon, safeoregon.com. Just check it out. That is the universal access point for reporting anything for any district, any school in Oregon. One site. It works extremely well. I know it personally. I know that site. I know the data behind it. There's also a whole professional development piece that comes out from Safe Oregon to all of their districts on a monthly basis. So again, it's that you cannot access this proprietary to the state, but Safe Oregon is really like what Wisconsin, I think, needs to do. We need to have one system, because then if kids move, then they don't have to relearn a system. Parents don't have to relearn it. Teachers don't have to relearn it. But this, to me, removes a barrier of possible discrimination, because it is generated also at a level which is more accessible to students. And you're not having to reteach students all these different systems. And it's some equity, right? Because if you're possibly a wealthy district, you might have multiple layers of systems and time to allocate to training students on how to use these in staff. And if you're a district that doesn't have that depth of resources, you might not have a system. So just thinking about that. In closing, I know you have years of experience and a solid knowledge base. I knew that the moment I went through your biographies for this class. Very, very impressed by what all of you brought. And there's so much that I would take off to the side in my own notes, or documents that you would upload and say, we use this in our district. I'd be like, I'm saving that because I want to, be able to learn more about that and maybe talk about that in a future class. So you've done so much to enrich this for me, and then also for the people that will follow in your footsteps in the next 655 class. So the truth is, I learned much from each of you each and every day. I want to be a value added instructor to you, but I also want to be very real with you of what you might encounter and the landscape that I see, because again, I work on a national level, so I can kind of see things that are trending, and to help you be as aware and as prepared as you can be in the pupil services role. So I want to help you find the what questions, not the why questions. Everybody can ask the why questions, but more like the what questions, and understanding the way that things are done. Help me to understand. I mean, that is a great question as a pupil services director. Help me to understand how we educate students about what is bullying. Help me to understand how that happens in the district. I mean, you're inviting people then to have that discussion. Well, this is what we do. And help me to understand what we do at first grade versus fifth grade. Doesn't make people feel threatened, but it helps to inform you, and it helps to inform the process. Help me to understand. So it is important to me that when you exit this class, I think you've had a great experience, and that you feel that you have value added to yourself as a pupil services director. And that's what I think separates Viterbo from other institutions of higher education. And if you leave this class and something happens, I had a student who completed this class, was a first-year director. 3 weeks later, had multiple suicides in her district, and had been implementing some of the suicide prevention work that we had talked about there had with what had already existed in the district. But she contacted me and said, we're really at a tough point right now, obviously, with dealing all of this. Could I talk through some things with you that we've talked about as an administrative team, and some of the stuff that we've just talked about in class this fall or the spring, whenever it was. And I said, absolutely. Like, I'm glad to listen and give some feedback, and, direct you to any resources that might come to mind as we go through this. So that's something too, that you can contact me down the road.
It's raining tacos